I once worked as a driver in the suburbs outside a big city, and it was an experience like no other. The area had a bizarre mix of people. One passenger might be dressed in business attire, complete with a watch and ring, heading from a meeting to a lounge. The next could be a dirty, drunken weirdo wearing only one shoe with no idea where they were going. It was stressful but oddly fun, giving me a front row seat to some of the most questionable characters in my community. One evening, I got a request for a ride way outside the neighborhoods I usually serviced. The location was about 5 or 10 minutes into a lightly forested area. As the county road turned from asphalt to dirt, I found myself bumping along the backcountry. My map kept directing me further off course until I ended up driving through a grassy field. In hindsight, it was a stupid move, but I was young and nervous about messing up my job. As I crossed the clearing, I saw some woodland on the other side with a dilapidated barn standing out. It looked straight out of a horror movie, with dry, rotted walls and ceiling, collapsing holes, windows without glass, and spider webs draping everything. The weirdest part, though, was the rear end of a bucket truck hanging vertically from a tree. I had no idea how it got there, but it hung ominously in the darkness. The tree was littered with cans and bottles on every branch. It was eerie, and I was in shock, just sitting there, idling, staring at this wasteland of weirdness. Then I saw movement along the distant tree line. At first, it was just shapeless commotion, but soon a figure emerged, shirtless, head tilted back, chugging a beer as he blindly walked into my headlights. He signaled me, confirming he was my passenger. I was petrified. If this had happened now, as an older man, I would have never gone out there. But I was young and scared of messing up my job, so I let him in. He finished his beer, crumpled the can, and threw it toward the barn before getting in and buckling his seatbelt without saying a word. It was so surreal. I slipped the car into reverse, backed up to the dirt road, and followed it out to the main drag. The guy just bumped around in the back without even a hello. I couldn't take the silence anymore and asked, "How's your night going, man?" Surprisingly, his response was normal, not yelling or whispering. He simply said, "Pretty good, man. Went bar hopping." He looked out the window, so I asked, "How'd you end up out here in the woods then? There are no bars out here, right?" He explained that he and some friends met some girls, hung out in a parking lot, and then dropped a bunch of acid. His casual explanation was beyond casual, like he was talking about the weather. It made some sense. He was tripping, which explained the late ride, the weird location, and his missing shirt. But it didn't explain the barn or the truck in the tree. I figured he was a local who knew about that spot for a long time. Then it hit me. He was tripping in my back seat. He probably thought I was the devil's chauffeur or something. I asked how long he'd been out there. He said, 2 days, which left me in sheer disbelief. Where were his buddies and the girls? Were they still out there? Or had they sobered up and left him behind? Whatever the case, this guy was thriving with a cell phone and a stash of beer. "Did you guys have fun?" I asked. He didn't respond, just kept breathing rhythmically, raspy from smoking. After a minute, I glanced back at him. What I saw is burned into my memory. He was staring at the back of my head with wide, bloodshot eyes, his pupils almost completely black. His face seemed vacant, emotionless. It was terrifying. I drove on, following the map to his destination without needing any directions. He stared at me the whole way, not even blinking. I asked if he was okay, or if I should take him to a hospital. No response. I gave up trying to get him to talk. We were almost to his drop-off point when he finally spoke up. Yeah, fun," he said strangely. Then he asked if we could stop by a gas station. I saw the sign glowing ahead and agreed. He seemed almost normal again, and I was relieved. When I looked back, he had a shirt on. I picked him up shirtless, chugging a beer. I have no idea where he got it from. Friends suggested he had it folded in his pants or a pocket, but I didn't see anything like that when he walked out of the woods. At the gas station, he thanked me profusely and even offered to get me something. He paid his fare and gave me a $20 tip, the biggest I'd ever gotten. He thanked me again, called me Maria, and left. By the way, I'm a guy, and I have no clue who Maria is. I never saw him again, but I still had his address in my map history. I had to see what kind of place he came from. When I drove by, there was no house, just an empty lot with a unit number. There were big ritzy houses around, but his destination was vacant. Maybe he gave me the wrong number, but it was another strange twist in this bizarre story. If someone told me this story, I'd think they gave a ride to the devil or something. The whole experience had a dark, heavy vibe. It was real, though. The guy paid with a credit card, and I don't think the devil has one of those. It's all in the past now, but I became much more selective about who I picked up and where I was willing to go after that. It all felt like a storm waiting for something bad to happen to me next. I used to drive for Uber as my second job, usually late at night during bar closing hours. It was a Saturday night around 3 a.m., a couple of hours into my shift, when I received a request to pick someone up across town from a street corner. I picked up an African-American man in his mid-20s with dreadlocks and a small tattoo on his neck. I didn't look much longer than that. I asked how his night was going, and he just grunted, a typical response as not everyone is super friendly. I confirmed the address he provided, which appeared to be a house, and he just said, "Yeah." About a minute into the drive, he got a little aggressive and concerned that I had apparently made a wrong turn, thinking I was taking a longer route. I assured him I was just following the app's route, and he calmed down. Then he asked me, "Are you feeling lucky?" I asked. "What do you mean?" He followed up with, "I mean, how much do you value your life, son? Nobody really values what they got." I didn't like where this was going. I responded that I appreciate my life and kids every single day. He went silent for a while, then started muttering things so quietly that I couldn't tell if he was talking to me or not. I asked, "What was that?" He replied, "Nothing, fool. Just get me to where I gotta be." I asked, "Where are we heading anyway?" He replied, "I just gotta take care of some unfinished business." I really didn't know what to make of that answer, but I wasn't looking to continue that conversation or dig any deeper. We pulled up to some corner in a rather poverty-stricken area, not an area I typically did drop-offs or pickups. The guy said, "Can you wait here for me?" I froze for a second, confused. I asked, "Do you need a ride back somewhere?" He replied, "Yeah, this'll be quick. I just got to take care of some unfinished business first." I didn't want to drive this guy anywhere else, and I had a feeling whatever he was about to do wasn't good based on his unfinished business comment. I didn't want to be the getaway driver after some kind of fight or altercation, so I said, "Yeah, I'll be waiting here." But I had no intention of waiting. The ride was marked as complete on my end anyway. He shut the car door and approached the house, but didn't go to the front door. He went to the back of the house by the backyard. I didn't stick around. I drove off after about 20 seconds, slowly and quietly, so he wouldn't hear me taking off. I ended my shift that night right then and there. I was pretty sketched out. The next day, I heard something on the news that changed a part of me forever. 2 people had been shot in their home in the town where I dropped that guy off the night before. As the news report went on, they showed a picture of the suspected shooter. It was the guy I had dropped off at that house. He had been apprehended fleeing the scene not too far away after neighbors reported hearing gunshots. The shooting was suspected to be gang-related. I have forever blamed myself for this, partially having been the one to drive someone with intentions of murdering people to his destination to commit his heinous act. People have told me if it wasn't me, it would have been another Uber driver, but I still can't help but feel partially to blame for this and not picking up on the red flags in that car ride. I attempted to get into the front seat at first, but Sahil told me to sit in the back. It was only the second time I ever tried sitting in the front before realizing it was customary to sit in the back seat. From the bar to the train station, it was about a 10-minute drive. I was taking the train instead of Ubering all the way home to save about $40. The driver was going very slow, but considering the weather outside, there was nothing unusual about that. Anyone would drive cautiously in such a torrential downpour. The driver didn't take the highway route. He took us down the side roads instead. I wasn't concerned about missing my train since I had plenty of time. However, I started to feel uneasy when the driver mumbled something under his breath and then pulled the car to the side of the road. I looked up from my phone to see why and noticed a man in the pouring rain waving his hands in the air. I almost asked if Sahil was stopping to pick him up, but I decided to observe. The man on the street got in the back passenger seat next to me, soaking wet, and kept his black hood on. I scooted all the way over to the left, expecting some exchange of words between the man and the driver, but there was none. Did they know each other? I had no idea what was going on. During the ride, I felt the man next to me looking at me out of the corner of my eye. Maybe he was looking out my window, I thought. I shot a quick half-second glance at him but realized I was wrong. He was staring directly at me. As the drive progressed, I started paying more attention to the route we were taking. It wasn't the right way to the train station. I tried to sneak a peek at Sahil's phone screen to see if maybe he was following an incorrect route. But he seemed to have his phone on his lap, unlike most Lyft drivers who had their phones mounted on the dashboard. I politely said, "I think we're going the wrong way." He replied in such a low tone, mixed with a thick accent, that I had a hard time understanding him. After asking him to repeat himself 3 times, I finally repeated myself and said, "We're going the wrong way." I confirmed this by checking the map on my phone, but Sahil didn't acknowledge me. I felt the man next to me inching closer every minute, his eyes never leaving me. Eventually, I asked Sahil to pull over and cancel the ride. Again, no acknowledgement. The driver was blowing through stop signs, and with no stoplights on these side roads, I didn't have a good chance to escape. I knew I was about to become a victim of something sinister. Deciding to jump out of the car when I had the chance, I waited until we were on a street with woods on one side, perfect for making my escape. The car was going about 15 to 20 miles per hour when I opened the door and jumped out. The 2 men screamed in a different language, probably communicating with each other. My impact with the ground was painful, but the layer of water on the street might have cushioned my fall a bit. The car came to a complete stop, and the man who had been next to me got out. I scrambled to my feet and ran into the woods, hearing him chasing after me for a short distance. He yelled something back to the car, which sounded like Russian, then ran back to the car, and they drove off. I immediately called an Uber instead of a Lyft this time, and thankfully, the new driver safely brought me to the train station. While on the train, I filed an online police report and contacted Lyft to report the driver. The next day, I also went to the police station to report the whole incident. This is when the bombshell dropped. There was a gray Honda Civic reported stolen just the night before. I gave the police every last detail I could remember and eventually went on my way, contemplating how narrowly I might have escaped with my life. That stormy night forever changed my perspective on safety and vigilance. The events haunt me to this day, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary encounters.